This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the podcast about Red Dwarf here on the We Made This Podcast Network. My name's Mark Adams and I'm your host today because we're doing 5 episodes in a week because we're fucking ridiculous. And we're doing the Smegazines.
Didn't we say 10 in a row yesterday?
We said 9 in a row, but I lost the will to live, so we're going to do the final 4 next year.
Prolong the pain. Prolong the pain.
I did think about re-recording the intro for the last episode, but that'd be kind of funny now that you've done that. That's Colin, by the way. Hello. Colin. Carl's here as well. He was the one who did the little dance you couldn't see while he sang a song. Hello, Carl.
Hello.
I really enjoy podcasting with you. I just don't like the research for those magazine episodes. It's really hard. And effort. Don't have to just watch a telly programme. You have to actually put actual hours in. So yeah, we've noped out. We're only doing 5. We said 9, but we're not. We're doing 5 and we'll do 4 more next year because it's our podcast, damn it. And 5 episodes in a week is still dead good and committed. And okay, there are other podcasts that are as committed as us that do Red Dwarf, but not the point. We're committed and care and stuff and things. Volume 2, Issue 2. I haven't written down when it was released.
June 1993. Technically, end of May 1993 is when it came out, but it's the June issue.
We have had that conversation quite a lot of times, so we don't need it. The cover features a photograph of Rimmer, and he's got an odd face, and it says, "Why is he such a git?"
I'm glad I've read this one because I actually read the next one earlier on today. Oh dear. I knew I should have checked. But I have read this one, so we're fine.
It also says Future Echoes is the most important episode, and there's an interview with Claire Grogan.
There is a question mark on that. It says, "We look at Future Echoes, the most important Red Dwarf episode ever." Perhaps.
I mean, maybe it was at that point because, Gunman of the Apocalypse hadn't happened.
True.
It also says there's some postcards. Did either of you have this? Did either of you get postcards?
No, this was after I stopped getting it.
I did get it. I'm trying desperately to remember what the postcards were. I believe a lot of them were planet shots of Starbug and Red Dwarf on various planets. Almost like, greetings from Titan, that kind of thing. Yeah, so...
Oh, that's cool. Rather than just another picture of Crichton and another picture of Cat, and yeah.
There probably was one of those as well, because they do love to use their random pictures of castmates that they've got.
Yeah.
So, this Megatorial it's more of a blurb in a kind of buy this magazine, and it's a shit contents page.
Well, it's not a contents page at all, because there is no contents whatsoever. No. There is a T-shirt competition for some of the shittest looking T-shirts I have ever seen.
Yeah, for American T-shirts. So in theory, imported T-shirts is a really, really cool prize, particularly in 1993. Yeah. But they were shit.
Yeah. I'm just double checking here. Do they have the thing that I remember a lot from these kind of things when I was a kid, which is wait 28 days for delivery? No, it doesn't. But I do remember if you ever ordered anything from America, it was going to take a month.
Yeah.
What it actually says, instead of wait 28 days for delivery, is we'll let you know who's won a bit after the closing date above, okay. Which I like the casualness of that. They don't want to commit to anything because they know how things have gone in previous issues.
Probably. The question, I didn't understand it and I certainly couldn't answer it.
I know the answer.
What was the question?
So the question was... We'll give them away to people who can tell us what Network's company name was when they started making and selling Red Dwarf T-shirts in this country. So the Red Dwarf mail order T-shirts that they have an advert for in every issue, the company is called Network, but it was previously called BMS. which I found out by looking in one of the earliest magazines.
Right, okay.
I didn't just know that.
It does pay off then, the having read the previous ones, that we could win these exclusive, if crap looking. Apart from the one of Rimmer in full Demon and Angels Dom gear. That would have been a fun one.
I couldn't work out who that was. It's basically saying we'll give this away to somebody who's got an earliest magazine to check.
Yeah.
Odd question. Okay, so first up is Lister the God Part 2. And this is a Cat Wars history, followed by, like, some crazy ass on the ship.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah, another Nigel Kitching strip with brilliant artwork, as all of them are. I really, really like this. The bit that I wasn't as sure about, there's a bit where, towards the end of it, they're sort of hiding behind a door, and the crazed cat warrior is about to sort of hack his way through. Lister and one of the goody cat people hide behind a door, and then Lister says, but if he smashes through the door and says, Johnny's home, all bets are off. Which made me think, is that because it was in 1993 and it wasn't as easy to check the film quote from The Shining? Because here's Johnny, obviously, is the quote, not Johnny's home.
Yeah.
And it's really jarring because it's really obviously wrong. But then, obviously these days,
It can't be a copyright issue, surely.
No, definitely not a copyright issue. But yeah, these days, any quote like that you hear repeated all of the time because of the internet, which obviously back then you didn't. So people probably did get things wrong more often, but didn't realise because nobody noticed.
Or it could be that they're portraying Lister as thick.
No, because it's the joke. The joke would make more sense if he said it correctly.
I like the thing that's been established here, that there's a 2000, because obviously in the books and in the earlier episodes they talk about it's about the blue and red hats for the hot dog stall and this and the other, but in this one it's half of them believe the god's name is Cloister and half of them believe it's Clister, and the elite of the cat world decide to just board themselves up in a tower and see who wins, basically. It's oddly political. It's more of an adult one, this one, I think, than some of the previous ones we've had.
It's very on brand to be satirical about religion again. The religions are depicted as utterly, utterly ludicrous. And I think that's generally what they like to do and suggest that religion is ludicrous.
In a lot of cases, definitely, it can be. I've not read the next one yet. I'm looking forward to reading it because I was really quite intrigued by the cliffhanger on the end of this where Hudson turns up.
A deep cut, but I was all for it and I wasn't expecting it and I was like, holy shit. It's kind of like everything gets worse crossover. Yeah. It's very clever.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is a great strip and I loved it last issue. I love it this issue.
I also like as well that they actually go exploring the cat lands in the present day, and the time obelisk or whatever it is, and Holly just doesn't know about it because she got reprogrammed until Lister gets kidnapped. I like that, but obviously this is the continuity for the comics, but we never hear of it again after this adventure.
Next up is News from the Dwarf, which is something that at the time would have been a major, major thing that I think most people would have gone for because it's the build-up to Series 6. And it announces Series 6's titles wrongly. And it also suggests a Christmas special that we never saw, which makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the title Call Me Legion. I think that's quite a fun title, but more so than Legion. But I can kind of see why they did it. But yeah, no, the Christmas special would have been interesting because to draw a slight parallel to Doctor Who, we've had the Doctor Who ones where it's like, well, how are you going to do a Christmas special and involve Christmas? And they always seem to get round it. I mean, they've even had Santa Claus turn up in Doctor Who. And I would, if they'd done it for Red Dwarf, would they have gone down that line?
Wasn't there robot Christmas trees on the Christopher Eccleston?
The first one, was killer robot Christmas trees.
Yeah.
And is it Capaldi? Yeah, it is Capaldi. It's Nick Frost as Santa Claus in probably one of the best bits of casting they've ever done.
Definitely.
There was eventually a Christmas special for Red Dwarf. It was just shit. 2 minutes.
I don't think that counts. That's not canon in any fucking way.
I think if the BBC brought it back, took it back over from Dave, and they started doing it again, I think they would do a Christmas special. Dave might do a Christmas special in the future.
They should.
But because it seems like something that there's scope to do, because you're in deep space, and in Dwarf you can pretty much get away with everything. I'm not going to spoil any of the Dave seasons, but we do meet quite a few people in those seasons you wouldn't expect them to run into.
Okay.
So...
David Bowie.
No, not David Bowie, sadly.
He was in Extras. Ooh.
The Chuckle Brothers.
They're not in it, but it would be fun to get the Chuckle Brothers. Well, maybe not now, but
can only get one.
You can only get one now.
What about Chucky? Is Chucky in it?
No.
Your special meter would explode.
What, Chucky was in Ready Player One, so you don't know. He's been in a science fiction before. In fact, in Ready Player One, the only fuck in the entire film was because of Chucky, which made me very happy.
Apart from all the audience that had read the book and quite liked it, going, fuck.
The savagery of your accuracy.
There's a bit where they mention a making of that's been abandoned, which I think's probably a precursor to Smegazine. Because that came out November the following year. So I think that's probably the early days of that germinating. You know, they would have been collecting all the footage from that. You know, if they were doing a making of, they'd have had funny bits in it because it's Red Dwarf.
Yeah. Also, the first Red Dwarf audiobook, The Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers, the 2-cassette version, which is the one I had growing up. 2 cassettes for $7.99. It's like, oh, bloody hell, that's perfect.
It's 25 quid for the 6-cassette version, I think it was.
Yeah. I never listened to the full sort of long versions. I've got a very sentimental feel for this, for the 2-cassette versions of the first 2 books.
I don't think I had either of them, but I have a really kind of irrational hatred of anything being abridged. I feel like it's like cutting the edges off a painting. Yeah. So I'm very glad that this has kind of faded away because, you know, it costs you $7.99 on Audible, regardless of how long the audiobook is these days. And you can't get the abridged versions of Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers on Audible. You can only get the full 6-hour one, which, if I had to pick between the two, I know it's got nostalgia for you, but if I had to pick between the two, I just wouldn't listen. To the
6 hours is still, these days, not that long for an audiobook. I mean, you can get podcasts now that do, 3 hours at a time.
The most recent episode of Chart Music, which is my favourite podcast in the universe, was 7 hours and 16 minutes long. And
Jesus.
All good. Not a minute wasted.
Yeah.
Marvel vs. Marvel, one of my very favourites as well, does gigantic episodes to the point where they split it into 2 now, but release them both on the same day. And I'm like, so why have you split it into 2?
So I'm just checking on my Audible account for lengths.
I don't tend to go on Audible to check out lengths. It's a grinder joke.
I thought it might be, yes. I haven't got that on my phone, surprisingly. No.
Have you not? It's well good. Dead useful.
Not so much for me, probably. Jerusalem by Alan Moore is the longest audiobook that I've got on here, and that's 60 hours and 43 minutes long. And so far I have been too scared to start it, because I don't know where I will find the time to listen to that.
I think the longest one I ever listened to was It, and that was knocking 40.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just looking. I'm just on the site where I get a lot of my audiobooks, and they've put all of the Red Dwarf ones together. So the first 2 books are there as a 15-hour total. The radio show, however, because they converted the first 2 books into a radio show.
Yeah.
For, I think, Radio 2 or Radio 4. That is basically the abridged version with sound effects. It is on, I think it's on YouTube somewhere. I found it for the list for things that we do on here. And it's actually quite good. It's a bit weird, but basically it's a full radio production, but Chris Barry's doing all of it. But it's pretty much what it is. It's quite good fun.
The other thing I'm really excited about that I don't think actually happened in the news from the Dwarf is build your own Starbug.
Yeah.
Kit build of Starbug is being made by the same people that make the Doctor Who Dalek kits. That sounds awesome.
That would have been very cool. I don't think it happens. Correct us if we're wrong, though, people what are doing.
And send me one.
Thanks, by the way. The one thing that I clocked was the price of Dimension Jump.
Yeah.
It was £19, which is £40 in modern day money. And that's reasonable. I think £40 for Dimension Jump is...
Do you know what
cool.
I clocked about Dimension Jump 93? This news article that they're telling you all about it takes place on the 2nd to 4th of July. So, literally weeks away. And it says that no guests have been confirmed yet. I think they had decent guests. I think they just tended to book things right at the last minute back then. Because I'm fairly certain they're in a future issue that we'll be talking about. I think there's a report from Dimension Jump. Because they had one for the previous years, didn't they?
And they were, as I say, they always seem to be guest-wise. They always seem to do quite well. I think right to this day it still does pretty well. Now, has there been one since we've come out of the pandemic? There has.
Yes.
We missed it.
We missed it.
We'll have to go to the next one. Because I've never been to one.
I think we should.
So
Yeah.
The online one was ace.
Yeah, I definitely would like to go. I've been to a few. Where I work, we have Hooverville, which is a big Doctor Who convention. And that's sold out already. That one's reasonably priced. That one's about 20 quid a ticket. And we've got like McGann, Sylvester McCoy's coming. A lot of the Big Finish doctors are going to be there as well.
Are any Big Finish executives going to be there that you can stand behind them going, do Red Dwarf, just subliminally?
Do Crime Traveller as well.
If we do Big Finish Day again, which we probably will, then I will drop the thing to them. I'll try and film myself doing it as well, and then I'll send it so we can put it on the social medias.
Definitely.
Back to the Smegazine. The other things that it mentions are the Man in the Rubber Mask, Craig Charles' Almanac of Everything, and the release of the Tongue-Tied single. And then the ongoing saga that I never knew was a thing about the VHS release of Series 1.
Yeah. Keeps getting put back and put back and put back.
Next up is an ad for the Judge Dredd Mega Special. I like the way they spell Mega, M-E-G-A. And then later on in the issue, on the back cover, is the Mad Collector Special advert as well. I mean, I didn't even know you got Mad Magazine in the UK.
Never read Mad Magazine. Always kind of went, oh, that looks interesting, but never read it.
I used to, my dad had a couple of the paperback book, like normal paperback book size collections of Mad stuff. So I quite liked a few of those. And then from that, I used to very occasionally buy, they used to get it, I think it was import copies of it. They used to get to Nostalgia and Comics in Birmingham. And whenever I went into Birmingham, I'd pick up a copy. And I remember there was a copy when it must have been 90... Are elections every 4 years or every 5 years? So I think it would have been 1993 then, so not long after this, because I got one that was around the time that John Major and Neil Kinnock were up for election, because it had a double cover, like you flipped the magazine, and one said, "Congratulations, Neil Kinnock, on becoming the new Prime Minister of the UK," and the other one said, "Congratulations, John Major, on continuing being the Prime Minister of the UK."
Nice.
So yeah, that would have been May 93.
Neil Kinnock. Next up is part 1 of a Chris Barrett interview, and I think we already knew this. He mentions that Alfred Molina was originally looking like he was going to be Rimmer, and then he also auditioned for Lister.
Yep.
One thing I did find interesting, particularly as we've looked at a couple of sitcoms that one of them got a second series it shouldn't have done, that the BBC were known for giving things two chances.
I think the BBC, because of the way that they're funded, had a little bit more freedom to do that kind of thing, whereas ITV, I think their shareholders were probably all about the money, and they were like, if this didn't get loads of viewers on the first one and get loads of people watching our adverts, we're going to withdraw our funding if you make a second series. So capitalism, that kind of bollocks.
Yeah, because it just makes me think about all the series that did come out, especially in the 90s, that did get two series, and you're like, why? Like Chalk, that got two series for no, even though it got panned from the very first episode. It's like, oh, well, we've said it could have two series, it could get better. And I remember seeing like, oh, it kind of got better, but it's still crap.
One of the ones I remember was called Ain't Misbehaving. I only watched it because it had Peter Davison in, who was the Doctor. And it was unsalvageably cack. But I continued to watch it because it had Peter Davison in it. And even like 15, maybe 13-year-old me, I was surprised that Ain't Misbehaving got a second series. And I watched it because it had Peter Davison in it, who used to be the Doctor.
It's your fault it got commissioned for a second one.
Yeah.
It was still cack. 12 episodes of absolute cack.
But at the same time, you've got to think about there's so many comedy series where they didn't find their feet on the first series. Blackadder. The first series is nowhere near as good as any of the later ones.
It's okay.
It's all right, but series 2, 3, and 4 are some of the best comedy things ever, comedy series ever made.
It's in one of the documentaries about Blackadder where basically they weren't going to do a second one, and then Ben Elton and Richard Curtis basically stripped away as much as humanly possible that they could.
Yeah.
Because obviously the first one's shot on film, there's horses, there's a castle. Yeah. And if you look at Blackadder 2, a lot of it is like 2 or 3 rooms for the most part. Yeah. But it's so good.
It's funnier by a long way. But even American stuff like Parks and Recreation, I love it, but the first series, season, because it's American, is nowhere near as good as it got later on.
Yeah, that's the thing that always frustrates me about American TV is they can do 5 episodes in and it's not selling billions, let's pull it. Or one series done is like, it didn't do as well as we thought, it only got like 52 million.
Yeah. I like the bit in this interview where he was talking about his inspiration for Ace. That was quite cool and worth a read. Yeah,
and how people saw him as differently because he was holding himself as the character and stuff.
He's talking about as soon as he puts the costume on, that helps him get into the character, and he was more confident when he was dressed as Ace. And the makeup lady said that he was quite shaggable.
Which now would get you pulled up in front of a tribunal of some kind.
It was the 90s.
I don't remember the 90s being gross because I was living in it. Yeah. But I think it was. And obviously I'm a white man and I was closet at the time, so I was cis-het and white. So obviously I didn't see any of the ick because it was my people doing it.
I do feel that we should reclaim the term shaggable, but not use it in terms of in a romantic sense, just in terms of describing something that's good. Like, that sandwich is shaggable. Just bring it back in that term,
Okay. I mean, that brings to mind that quote in What We Do in the Shadows, where they're talking about them having the blood of virgins is what they prefer. And that's like, put it this way. If you had a sandwich, you'd prefer it if nobody had fucked.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's true.
But if you're starting describing sandwiches as shaggable, that's the implication.
That's an erotic sandwich. Yeah.
I'm going to move on to the next article.
Yeah.
Broke Colin Carl.
Just the phrase, an erotic sandwich is fucking brilliant. I love
It's when you, Matt, and Kurt get together.
Understandable.
We know who's in the middle of that sandwich as well.
Matt.
Oh, he's going to love
Fully
listening
Matt.
to this one back.
I am Matt. Next up is The Ascent of Catkind, which is a kind of odd little article about evolution and stuff that I genuinely didn't know. I didn't know that 3 million years wouldn't have been enough to evolve a cat to a cat person. I thought that they'd got that right.
I think the evolution of humans took longer than that. Yeah.
I mean, what they're basically saying in this piece is that cats are mutants because it's the cadmium-2 that's boosted the evolution of the cats. So was it squeezing 20 million into just 3? So the cats are mutants, which again is not something that gets brought up. But can't give Danny John Jules too many lines.
Feels like a retcon.
It's very well written, but then that is because a lot of it is pretty much copied wholesale from Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers. I really did like the timeline. There's a timeline across the bottom.
Oh, the illustrations were great. They were fucking brilliant.
Like there's a picture of a toy mouse and it says, rubber icon, use unknown.
I like as what you get a picture of the cat's parents, which I think was quite nice. It appears that the cripple and the idiot.
That's the ones.
It's very apparent in this photo which one of them to me is the idiot.
Yep.
One of them's just smiling, cat's licking the back of his hand and just preening himself, wearing an excellent backwards cap. And then there's one lad in the middle who's just grinning like an absolute tit. And I was like, that's his dad.
No, I think that's Cat in the middle.
Is it?
I think that's a child version of Cat.
Okay.
So perhaps the illustrations aren't as good as we thought if they're not that clear. I think the one licking his hand is his dad, the idiot.
Okay. I was just going across the line of where the text underneath said mum, dad and cat.
I think they've done a really good job of drawing a child version of Cat.
Hair looks immaculate, it has to be said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun and it was silly and it came out of nowhere and I liked it. It was a nice little section. Next up is the Junior Encyclopedia of Space and the remarkable Red Dwarf Databank, which is 2 extra shit letter pages to add to holograms.
Yeah. The Junior Encyclopedia of Space, I mean, some of it just feels like it's staffers knowing little bits of information, like the fact that the set of Justice is the set for Games Master, so they can get away with just going, oh, did you know? It's basically a did you know thing dressed up as a letters page.
Yes, because that doesn't give a name. That one's various questioners. The one that I really like, though, on the Red Dwarf Databank, please settle an argument. Wasn't Nicholas Ball... No, that's the wrong one. That's not the one I mean. Sorry. Rewind. The bit I really like is the question that says, I'm sure I remember the clangers appearing in Red Dwarf. Which episode were they in? Name provided but withheld due to the stupidity of the question. And then they answer it and point out that it was actually the clangers do turn up on the telly in the Sea Devils Doctor Who episode. Yeah. And then say, by the way, we've got a Best of the Clangers video to give away. I'm fairly certain that entire question was reverse engineered because someone inexplicably gave them a Clangers video.
I think the whole thing is bullshit. I don't think a single person had written in.
The thing as well is they mentioned that Claire Grogan's in the video for Young at Heart by the Bluebells, which I mentally locked away because it was everywhere when it got re-released and went to number 1. It was on an advert or something, wasn't it? But now, like, do I open that door and go and look at the video to see if Claire Grogan is there? Which apparently she is.
I don't remember seeing the video.
No.
I remember them being on top of the pops for weeks and weeks and weeks. Not a wet length of time. But I remember it hanging around. I think it was at number 1 for quite a while.
I remember it being at number 1 for quite a while, which is why my brain's kind of rejected it. Bit behind the scenes here. The other day, I was at my workplace, and that our kitchen team could not remember a song. All they could remember is that it went...
Susan Vega.
Tom's Diner.
So immediately they're like, do you know what it is, Carl? It's like, no, I don't, but I know a man who does. Singing it down the phone 30 seconds later to one Colin Jackson Brown.
Yep.
I think it took him...
I got it too.
Got it in 2 notes.
Yeah. I think it took him 10 seconds to send me back the thing. And then literally, as soon as I told the rest, coming out of our kitchen was da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And there was our place is next to a wedding reception place. So there's weddings receptions out there getting in the car, and you could just see some of them going like da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The Virus that is Tom's Diner by Suzanne Vega.
It's a good one.
It is a good one, yeah.
Although her first album's a lot better.
I couldn't tell you another song by Suzanne Vega, but I knew the moment you went it was Suzanne Vega. I mean, I think I prefer Vega from Street Fighter 2, but
that's based on her.
Yeah. I heard.
It's really difficult for her to play her guitar with those big fucking knife things on her hands.
She can't see the crowd through the mask either.
Yeah.
So
that's a tangent we weren't expecting.
Yeah, well, there was another... Right, going back to the Junior Encyclopedia of Bollocks.
Is that a grinder thing?
List...
Not the junior one, no.
No, it is not. It says that 30 is over the hill to Lister.
Fuck off.
Lister is now 60 in the TV series.
Yeah.
It's all right. He lives to 100 and something at least.
It's like 172 or something like that.
Yeah.
Good remembering, you're right. Next up is the comic strip Jake Bullitt and the Case of the Cashed-In Contestant Part 7. It is the conclusion after over half a year. And the art is just as great and weird and odd as it always was. And the ending is fucking brutal.
I thought it was really rushed. That was the only problem I had with it. I like what they've done, but I think it feels like the final last bit of it could have done with an extra page to flesh it out a bit more.
And maybe even a full screen for him walking away from the explosion.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of Lord of the Rings, where the ending takes fucking 6 months, because they just add ending after ending after ending after ending, like the end of fucking Purple Rain.
Terrible.
No, not the film. The song Purple Rain has just got loads of false endings. But yeah, this when I was reading it, I liked it, but I did really feel that they'd rushed it, which maybe they could have got rid of part of the Junior Encyclopedia of Space and given it a bit of an extra page.
Yeah.
Or maybe they could have just got rid of the entirety of the Junior Encyclopedia.
One of the things throughout this whole strip I do enjoy the strip. I love the art on it. Was Bob Monkhouse's people must have been, because there's no real hiding it. The main character what turns out to be the villain in this, the game show host,
antagonist,
is Bob Monkhouse.
Yeah, it's a photo of him.
But he must have been really fine about this kind of thing, or they just thought, let's not mention it and see what happens.
Pretty sure Bob Monkhouse didn't read the Red Dwarf Smegazine.
Bob Monkhouse was a legend.
He was. Mob Hunkhouse was even better.
Was that your name on Grindr?
No, it's just I don't want Bob Boldness to be there. He's dead. He's dead. Someone shot him.
You sorted that, didn't you, Mark?
May or may not have been me. Yeah, it was me.
Spoilers.
I would have done. We don't know who did it. I don't even know whose idea it was to shoot
I'm fairly certain it was Matt's.
Yeah.
Because Matt wasn't around. Every time Hob has turned up, Matt hasn't been there.
He was asleep on the sofa.
Then there's a poster.
There's a poster, you're right. And it is a decidedly average poster, but a poster nonetheless.
It's a poster where Hattie Hayridge just looks really bored and pissed
Her
off.
eyes are pretty much closed on it. You're like, Craig Charles looks like, I don't know, he looks hungover. He's just like...
He probably was.
Yeah, he looks rough. And you just thought, Chris Barry looks annoyed. It's just this thing of like, we could have taken another one. Nah, bugger it. Because this is blatantly a press photo, isn't it?
In fact, Danny John Jules is the only one that is looking at the camera and looks like he doesn't absolutely hate the fact that he's having his photo taken, which makes sense because he always looks cool as fuck.
He's the only one who doesn't look homicidal.
Also true. I wouldn't have noticed as a kid, and I'd have gone, oh, it's Red Dwarf, and I'd have put the poster on the... We're being hypercritical as a bunch of middle-aged men.
Yep.
But it is crap. It is crap. I'm sorry, it's crap.
So anyway, Peter Ragg turns up.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm all about there being more Peter Ragg, and it's a short article creating space about a very specific element of Red Dwarf, the creation of the model of Red Dwarf itself. Yeah. And I think it's fucking insane that Peter Ragg says that he was disappointed with it.
Yeah, he's talking about... I don't think it's the model he was disappointed with. I think he's talking about the transition shots in the title sequence from Lister painting it, because they couldn't quite get it to look, completely seamless. But do you know what? I never noticed any issue with it at all. But when it's your own work, you are going to notice the mistakes and that kind of thing. The problem, he says, was they couldn't get the camera in quite close enough to the model for it to look right for the scale of it, which makes sense. You'd have to use like a really macro lens or something like that to do it, which they probably didn't have. But he did an amazing job. He's an absolute genius. I think there's a bit that mentions other things that he worked on.
Yeah, he did Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet.
Yes, it mentions that, and then I went to IMDb to see what else Peter Ragg had done.
The main one I remember is he did Bottom.
So he did Bottom, he did the Detectives, he did Doctor Who, as you'd expect. But the one I was most excited about that he did Threads.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, God.
What's Threads? I thought it was that shit social media I don't like.
No, Threads is a British TV movie made in the mid to late 80s about a nuclear bomb landing on Sheffield.
Yeah.
And it's harrowing as fuck, but amazing.
It's brutal. Yeah.
Wasn't that When the Wind Blows?
No, it was about the same sort of time. But it was the height of Cold War paranoia. Yeah. But Threads is an absolutely amazing film, but it will fuck you up.
At the time, apparently it really put the shit up people.
Yeah.
Shall I put it on the specials?
No, because it's not close enough connected to Red Dwarf in any way. Apart from Peter Ragg. Peter Ragg worked on it. Okay, it's closer than fucking Gappa the Triphibian Monster.
You knew what I was going to say.
I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, it's.
Is it really that bad? I'm genuinely
It's amazing,
curious.
but it is not a fun watch. It also leads to one of the most notable IMDb entries ever. There's an actress called Anne Seller who only ever appeared in Threads. And her sole appearance in any acting medium was urinating lady. Yeah. Because she's the lady that pisses herself when the nuclear bomb hits.
I remember seeing, I haven't watched it in a long time, but I remember seeing a clip of it popped up it was on Charlie Brooker, when he was talking about sort of impact of TV, and they showed the scene of the bomb going off. And even now, they're just like, it's like, oh, it puts a chill down you. Because as we're recording this is when Oppenheimer's currently in cinemas, and I've seen it working as a projectionist. I've seen most of it now about 8 times. And so the actual recreation of things in that is very visceral and harrowing to watch.
Yeah. There's that particular scene. Yeah. So I once got to the semi-final of the Tamworth Battle of the Bands with a project called Trommel Machine SR88, which was me with an old late 70s drum machine going into a bass amp with loads of delay effects and various other effects pedals on it, and a guitar with all of the strings tuned to the same note, and random samples of Numbers stations and Charles Manson and weird shit. And I had a projectionist, and we basically, it was a 20-minute set where I just played one piece of music and projected the scene from Threads where the nuclear bomb hits, just on a loop. And half of the audience were terrified. Somehow it got to the fucking semi-finals. but I wasn't able to get the projectionist for the semi-final, so I just borrowed as many strobe lights as I could and pointed every single one of them at the audience in front of me, so they couldn't even see me while I was playing, and it was just strobe lights.
Nice.
That was fun.
And this is why I don't go to see local bands. Next up is the article on Future Echoes that is on the front cover. And it's kind of a 50% good, 50% shit. I love the behind-the-scenes stuff, but what's the point of the synopsis?
Yeah.
I mean, there is the thing that we've talked about in previous ones, in that the first series is kind of rare at this point.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Good point.
And it's not coming. It's still not coming out.
Still not out.
So if you're looking at some of the photos in this, where you've got there's Lister's grandmother, there's Rimmer with a beehive hairdo and Lister holding baby twins. You're like, what the hell happened in this episode?
Yeah.
It could be a very subversive advertisement for the videos when they do come out.
There's actually a really interesting point made about Bexley's death. Lister doesn't mourn the death of his son whatsoever in Future Echoes, and it kind of highlights that that's absolutely the antithesis of how Lister would have behaved. He wouldn't have tap danced at his own kid's death. And yeah, that really stuck out to me.
I mean, this is during the period where Craig Charles is quite critical of his performance. I remember seeing watching the episode with the commentary on, where he does the dance and he does the squat and he kind of pops back up again with his hands behind his head. You hear Craig Charles on the commentary go, I can't do that anymore. But then he does the admittedly pretty bad delivery of Rimmy, you saw me son die? And Craig Charles is like, oh, could have done that again. So, this is the thing, though. It's those early years, isn't it, where they're not quite sure. As far as they're aware, they don't know if they're coming back for another series or what. So,
but one thing I need to point out about Future Echoes is the beehive gag is one of my favourite gags in all of Red Dwarf ever. It's just so silly and so humiliating. It's because it's humiliating Rimmer, obviously, but it's just great. It's just great.
Chris Barry's delivery of "you are how you look, and I look like a complete and total tit" is still probably one of the best deliveries in the whole series.
Agree.
Another notable bit I thought of in this particular article, though, we've obviously, when Rob and Doug split up, we've talked quite a lot in the last few series about how Doug is more into the drama side of things. Whereas Rob was more driving the comedy. It mentions that as far back as this.
Yeah. You've
got a bit in there where it mentions how Doug was keen to get more sort of drama involved. And I was surprised that it that was apparent as far back as just before Series 6 was released. I mean, by this point, they've finished making Series 6, so they've worked together for the last time, really, at that point. There's no clues in anything else that they're going to split up, but perhaps that is one of the first clues.
The next article is what's happening next month, and they are heavily hyping a new comic strip called Mima's Crossing, which sounds absolutely fucking wild, so I'm looking forward to that.
I think we need to read the synopsis, because it's fucking brilliant. The Godfather meets the Jetsons in an epic tale of sex, drugs, greed, and ex-Saturday morning TV presenters as prostitute without a heart of gold Trixie LaBouche and wheeler-dealer Astro Dutch Van Istrogen take on the Ganymede Mafia. Gangland murders, illegal body swapping, severed horses' heads. We've got 'em all next issue. Looking forward to that. Don't disappoint me, Smegazine.
I mean, it does kind of highlight that maybe this isn't aimed at kids, and that's why you shouldn't have had it, Colin.
Absolutely.
And other than that, we've got some more of the Chris Barry interview. There's a Danny John Jules interview and an article on Crichton's makeup, all of which sound bloody lovely. So I'm looking forward to next issue. Then we've got Android.
Everybody needs good Android. I love it. I still love it.
So it's cack. I don't understand.
I don't think this one's as bad as some of the other ones.
I like the joke about the two decapitated heads going, hang on, what with?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, credit where credit's due. This particular one has an environmentalist agenda, which is very much my wheelhouse. And the reference to Garbage World did not get missed out. I was very pleased that there was a nod towards Garbage World. But it's still cack.
My favourite thing about it is, if you go back to that initial scene in Crichton, where they watch androids, is when someone says, hey, it's so-and-so, and they go, you mean my, and then explain everything about that person in a quick sentence. They do that here. Where it's like, look, it's JC. What? You mean my evil, illegitimate son, JC, from whom I've sworn to take back the family firm? I love that. If you read everything like it's Calculon, it's great.
It is quite good at what it does, but unfortunately what it does isn't funny.
I like it.
I know you do, and I'm glad you do. It proves that the Smegazine
I'm
is for
launching my
everyone.
own podcast where I come up with new episodes of androids. And I'm doing all the voices.
I mean, we could put it as a special if you want. Next up is an article on Red Dwarf 6. And at the time, this would have been exactly what Mark wanted.
I think the thing with our season 6 blurb is they keep mentioning, like, oh, they've lost Red Dwarf. It's like, don't spoil it. You know, it's, you know, we're still weeks away. It's like, don't do this. You wouldn't do it now. You definitely wouldn't do it now.
What would happen now is they'd put the trailer out and people would watch it scene by scene and go, there's no Red Dwarf in there. And there'd be theories going around. And then they'd reveal it, and that'd be way more fun.
Yeah.
But probably really annoying.
I remember when the first series of Doctor Who, the Eccleston series, came out, they'd release the teaser trailer at the end of the episode for the next episode, and it was the 2-part finale, and they did this whole thing of like, oh, no, this is happening, and then he asks the Daleks, how did you survive the Time War? And you just hear a voice go, they survived through me, but they don't show who it is. All week, I was like, who is it? It's so-and-so, it's Davros, it's this, it's that, the other. It turned out to be an Emperor Dalek, which was a bit of a letdown, but there were so many different things I saw online going, oh, it's gonna be this. You know, it's the lad that they dumped with the thing in his head earlier in the series come back and he's turned into something. You know, it's just like, all sorts of stuff. And I love that kind of thing.
No one said it was the Rani.
No, I'm still waiting for there to be a new Rani. I think there will be at some point.
Next up is time slides and stasis leaks. And there's more synopsises. And a dig at Star Trek. And that's about I've got.
It's another one of the things that the Smegazine does to fill space every now and again, where it picks a topic and then lists every episode that's had something even closely related to that topic in it. When we're familiar with all of the episodes, it's a bit pointless.
I mean, it's good. I mean, it's essentially a Wikipedia entry about time travel and stuff in Red Dwarf, isn't it? Which back then maybe, like you said, back then would have been a good read, but to us now is just so it's the hindsight thing, isn't it? It's
and maybe we are being a little bit unfair, but I don't care. It sucked, hated it. Moving on. Next up is read any good books lately, and it's a pun. It's R-E-D instead of R-E-A-D.
Same as it has been every time.
I like puns, and every time there's a pun, I like to point out that there's a pun. There's a pun.
I was quite excited on this one.
It's a bit crap though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really?
because it's got Mort and Dirk Gently.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but they were both ancient books. Why are they reviewing really old
Because
books?
at that point is probably about the time I read both of them for the first time. So, you know, they were still being discovered by 11-year-olds at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, I had of all the books they've got on the article, I hadn't read Mars by Ben Vover, and that actually sounds okay. But I mean, Mort had been released over 6 years previously.
Maybe it was a reprint.
No, the reason that they've mentioned that is because they wanted to get a Discworld book mentioned, and they were trying to think where a good place to start for people is, because it mentions in the article that The Colour of Magic is, despite being the first book in the series, not a good place to start because it's one of the worst Discworld books.
It's all right.
It hasn't picked up enough of the feel and the humour of it yet, though. Pratchett hadn't quite found where he was going with it at that point. And every few years, I go, I'm going to start reading Discworld all the way from the start. And I read Colour of Magic and then I get bored. And I've done it so many times. And this is basically saying the best thing to do with Discworld books is choose a different thread, like reading the Witches books or, the Watch or someone like that. And they're saying basically at this point, if you want to start reading the Death books, Mort is the first one of those, and that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Which I can't argue with, because Mort is fantastic. I think my favourite Discworld book is Soul Music, but Mort is brilliant as well, because Death is one of my favourite characters in all of the Terry Pratchett books.
I must admit, I think I bought one and tried reading one, but this might be the same where I was, what I did with The Hitchhiker's Guide, that I probably bought one quite far in and not realised it. But I've never really got into Discworld.
I think Matt is the main one of us that is the Discworld aficionado. Is that the right word? Aficionado? Aficionado? I don't know. It's a word I've only ever read.
Affectionado?
Fuck knows.
Oh, aficionado.
I say reservoir, so, I'm not an authority on things.
I've read, I think the first 10 or 12 of them and then just fell out with it.
None of them are as good as Good Omens, which is my favourite book of all time.
I need to watch the series. I really need to watch the series.
Yeah, you do. I've just watched the second series, and it's very, 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 very good, despite not being based on the book, because the book is just the first series.
Yes. I think they perform. Because I see clips all over social media and stuff, and I've managed to avoid spoiling it for myself so far, really. I've seen bits of it that I can't avoid, but I'm quite looking forward to sitting down and watching it properly.
Have you seen the first series
No,
at all yet?
I need to sit down and watch it.
Do it. It's fantastic.
Next up is Greetings from Gelfworld, and the art is magnificent in this comic strip.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's prepping for the Mimas Crossing that's coming as well, because that's in a very similar style to this.
It's David Littleton, he's done a couple of the previous ones as well.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely grim, bleak satire and commentary. And I'm quite a fan of bleak and grim satire and commentary. And this was just vicious and cruel and cynical and completely and utterly without any kind of redemption. Yeah. It was fantastic.
Yeah. I always remember the part when I first read this was that the prisoner, Drigg, finally convincing the prison door to join him in a revolution because everything on Gelfworld is a Gelf, even his prison.
Which is a really good concept. Yeah. I like it.
Next up is Holograms. There's a tasteless joke about someone taking their own life.
Oh, that letter, a grim letter about Holly leaving it manages to have two bits going on about, this is a suicide note. Fuck off.
Horrible.
Then it's also...
They published that.
And it's also got stuff about the picture of Holly in issue 13 was so beautiful I had to buy another one because we slobbered all over the first one. It's like, fuck, why would you print that? It's just, don't indulge these. It's clearly a young teenager that's written it in, but they don't need indulging. But what I did like is there is a letter in there where somebody is complaining, Dear Red Dwarf Smegazine, I'm afraid I'm going to be a real smeghead and start by complaining about your failure to give us any warning about the Book of Scripts Primordial Soup. At least I can't find any reference to it. Obviously sent in before the previous issue, which had about 7 different references to the Primordial Soup script book, which, I was commenting on yesterday's episode that it was mentioned. They were really trying to sell the Primordial Soup script book.
There's a very fun drawing of
Maybe.
Mr. Flibble.
Yes.
And a lad a 70-year-old who's dressed up as Crichton for something, a homemade Crichton outfit, which is just adorable.
Yeah, that's what letter pages are
His
for.
costume's shit, though.
You're vicious. Just because it's true doesn't mean it's not mean.
It's fine. It'd be nearly my age now.
Hang on, what's the name on this
If
photograph?
he's listening in. Yeah. Kurt North.
Tony Peake.
Right, okay, Tony Peake. If you're listening in, I know Colin's address, I'll give it you. I won't. Next up is the Hologram Protection Act of 2143, and I just found it flippant and unpleasant.
Yeah.
Like, just nasty and, ick.
Yeah.
Also, we were trying to cram in a lot of reading this and making notes over the weekend, and I didn't want to read a legal document, even if it is a spoof of a legal document. I just kept reading it going, no, brain's not computing this. Let's go to another page.
Now, as a concept, the legality of holograms isn't looked at all in the series, and I think that is something that would be of value, of interest, and I'd be very interested in that on the telly show, maybe. There was a little bit in Back to Earth, I suppose, where they discussed whether or not it was murder to kill a hologram. But I think that would be a fascinating topic, just not the way it was looked at here.
There's one thing which is slightly funny, which is accepted conventions dictate that a living amoeba outranks a dead third technician.
Yeah.
Laboratory animals may or may not be deemed superior to a hologram.
There's a slight issue with that. Isn't Rimmer a second technician?
Yeah.
It's listed as a
It
third
is.
technician.
So the whole point of... There's a note at the bottom saying, in accordance with Section 2, Paragraph 1 of this Act, Dave Lister was charged with the undue, albeit temporary, termination of Arnold J. Rimmer after a visit to the Waxworld theme park. Presiding judge was Holly, she being the senior representative of the owner, the Jupiter Mining Corporation. The trial was convened at the request of Mr. Rimmer, but the case was dismissed following Mr. Lister's announcement that he just discovered an ill amoeba. But that doesn't necessarily outrank Rimmer.
Yeah.
I think they've forgotten what rank Rimmer was when they wrote it.
Probably. Next up is Trek Dwarf, and it's a report about a combi of Star Trek and Red Dwarf convention. And that's a peculiar thing that I didn't know existed.
I knew of Trek Dwarf at the time. Had no
Really?
interest in half of it. But, well, was quite interested in the Red Dwarf side, obviously. I really like this article. There's a couple of things in it that I thought were absolutely brilliant. Obviously, the special guest was Danny John Jules, who the convention took place over the weekend that they'd finished filming Series 6. So Danny John Jules was collected from the wrap party at 4:00 in the morning and driven from London to Leicester by one of the organisers of the convention. I love how low-key that is. It's like, there's no promotion companies involved in this. It's some people that are fans of Red Dwarf and Star Trek that have booked it all, and they're going around chauffeuring people, and they really want to get Danny John Jules there, so they go and pick him up from a party at 4:00 in the fucking morning.
Part of me feels like it was just Danny John Jules on his way back to his hotel or whatever, and a car pulls up and goes, "Hey, Danny, do you want to come meet some?" Get in the car. Do you want a lift, Danny? And he goes for a nap in the back, and he wakes up in Leicester.
Oh, there's loads of fans here. I'll hang out with them.
The thing I liked about it was how it kind of put you back into the 90s of a kind of pre-internet world. And Red Dwarf Series 1 is rare. Star Trek is behind the USA and the UK. No one's seen the Red Dwarf USA pilot. It's fascinating.
The bit about the Red Dwarf pilot is my favourite bit, spoilers for the end of the episode, my favourite bit in the entire magazine, because, let me just read this. Viewings of the rare first series of Red Dwarf were packed, as were the showings of the new Star Trek episodes. Unfortunately, the American Red Dwarf pilot, which remains unbroadcast in any country, couldn't be shown as promised, TV company Universal actually sent the convention organisers a copy, but under strict instructions not to show it. What? Why did they send them a copy and tell them they couldn't show anybody?
Describe the box to people.
At all. Here it is, don't watch it.
Maybe they knew.
I mean, that's the sensible thing to do, is not watch the Red Dwarf USA pilot, as you guys know very well.
Indeed.
Perhaps it was, here it is, don't watch it, it's shit.
I like that it was for charity as well. They had an auction for charity and raised over £1,000.
Okay, so here's the thing about that auction. Again, I looked at inflation. It's about 2,050 quid they made. You would sell memorabilia like the kind of shit that was available here. Star Trek and Red Dwarf. Each item would go for £2,050 each now.
At the beginning of the article, it's like several hundred Red Dwarf and Star Trek fans descended on a hotel in Leicester one weekend, and you just feel like it would go to fight.
So, it mentions in there that the main star thing of the auction was Lister's freshly pulled off dreadlocks, which went for £55.
Yeah.
55 quid for the actual dreadlocks that he wore in the show. So I was quite interested to see if anything like that had sold again. So I tried to have a look for, like, on eBay for Red Dwarf Dave Lister dreadlocks. Couldn't find anything like that, but I found a website called Prop Store.
Nice.
Gives us, there are 16 things on the Red Dwarf page. Most of them are models of Starbug, used in various different series. So, how much do you reckon a model of Starbug goes for?
300 quid.
£8,000.
Right, Carl, you are nowhere near. So, there's models of Starbug here. The cheapest one sold for $2,995, but the most expensive one sold on the 18th of October 2021, so less than 2 years ago, for £75,000.
Bloody hell.
I said 8,000 and thought I was being a bit ambitious. £75,000.
There's one of the baby scutters sold for £17,500.
I remember we looked at those as well in a previous issue of this magazine, and I think they sold for about 50 or 60 quid each, if my memory serves. Somebody made a profit. Fuck.
Lister's acoustic guitar from the early series sold for 2,812 quid, which...
Is that Mr. Guitar?
No, that was his electric later on. Crichton's naked suit, so the flesh-coloured suit from... is that Series 8? Was that from Crikey TV?
It depends which
Is that
one.
when he's in the showers?
Yeah.
There was one in Series 3, though, wasn't there? The one that got used and they didn't make the cut.
Oh, it could be. That sold for £3,075. Then there's a Bazookoid sold for £1,795.
I would have thought it would have gone for more than that, actually, a Bazookoid.
The Matter Paddle, same price, £1,795. And also the Plasma Time Drive went for the same price. Crichton's David Ross butler costume, the sort of PVC tuxedo kind of thing, £1,250. Rimmer's pink Cavalier costume, which was that Better Than Life?
No, that was...
Terraform.
It was Rimmer's...
Terraform. Yeah.
Yes.
£995.
Mark, you spent £995 on that.
And the cheapest one was the Junior Colour Encyclopedia of Space, which went for £309 in 1999.
Bloody hell.
But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, they got some serious bargains in that. You've got to remember there was some Star Trek merchandise in there as well, and imported from the States. Memorabilia. I mean, fucking hell. £1,000, which is now 2,050 in modern inflation.
Yeah.
That's batshit. Absolutely
Something
batshit.
they mentioned in this as well is that Gene Roddenberry's only just recently died. I forgot that I thought he passed away long before.
So the main Star Trek guest they've got there is a guy called Richard Arnold, who I don't know if he's that well known with Trekkies because I'm not one. He was a Star Trek archivist who worked really closely with Gene Roddenberry, and his job was basically to say yes or no to various different Star Trek projects.
Ah.
And he apparently got quite a reputation for being really brutal. Like people would say, "Oh, can I do this Star Trek extended universe novel sort of thing?" And he'd be like, "No, fuck off." But I like the fact that he was at the convention. He was wearing a Starbug sweatshirt,
Which I kind of want to see what that was.
Yeah, there's no picture, which is a shame.
Next up is an article called Kachansky's Back, which is a interview with C.P. Grogan, and we understand why she's called C.P. Grogan because that is covered in the article itself. And I know people who've struggled with that before, the Actors Union not allowing you to use your real name because someone else has claimed
because there's another Claire Grogan, and when she turned up the first time on set, when she went to the makeup room, they'd got a photo of the wrong Claire Grogan in there, as she says in the interview. I tried looking up what the other Claire Grogan had been in, but she doesn't have an IMDb entry. So, obviously, didn't get to be as successful, which is probably why our Claire Grogan is allowed to use her actual name now.
I was going to say, I was sure Claire Grogan is Claire Grogan these days on there.
She is. Perhaps she defeated the other one in Mortal Kombat. Not the game, actual Mortal Kombat.
There can only be one Claire Grogan.
They had a fight to the death.
But this article makes a really big deal of C.P. Grogan coming back. And it did just make me smile because it was just a tiny little cameo. And then the next series, Chloe was in more... Well, Chloe had more screen time in
one episode.
The first episode of Series 7 than C.P. Grogan did in any... across the whole first 6 seasons.
Yeah. Did you notice, though, we've been mentioning how spoilery they've been earlier on. She's really, really cagey and wouldn't tell them what she was doing in the series, which is great.
It's great, but it's probably because she was embarrassed. She was in it for about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I'm only in it for, one line. She is pretty badass in that scene.
The thing is, as well, is... again, it's the thing that kind of bugs me, is they've announced it. She's back. It would have been an amazing thing for them to not announce it.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they don't announce Anita Dobson's in it.
True. True. I had to look up who Alexandra Pig was, because there's a lot about Miss Pig in this. And Alexandra Pig is a stage name. So the lady who acts under the name Alexandra Pig could have gone for any name she wanted, but she chose to be called Miss Pig. Why? Why?
Maybe the same as the Claire Grogan thing. She gets hired by the Muppets because of a typo.
Yeah. Kermit's like, who the fuck is this?
She was actually a relatively big, 80s actor in Brookside, but
right.
But yeah, she got to choose whatever name she wanted, and she went for Alexandra Pig.
She could have been Mark Adams.
She probably couldn't. I don't think I could be Mark Adams. It's a really common name, and there's bound to be someone with that as a martyr already.
Fair.
I did a wrestling show as a referee because we hadn't got any a couple of months back, and I decided I didn't want to be Mark Adams because obviously it was my evil clone, and I decided I was Adam Marks, and everyone found that very funny. So my referee name is officially Adam Marks.
Just looking here, Altered Images, which gets mentioned a bit in this article, are still playing. And are playing in London on October the 26th and Glasgow on September the 10th. And I think they do a lot of the 80s weekenders at Butlins and all those kind of things.
They do.
And that's fun because she talks about how it feels like so far in the past being in Altered Images in this article. I clocked that as well.
What I really liked in the article, though, is there's an old reprint of a page from Eagle comic, which they were able to do because it's the same publisher, it's Fleetway. Yeah. So they didn't even have to get any copyright from that. They could just reprint that page. And it's great because it's a little music magazine section from 1981, which I always find interesting, reading old music magazines.
You should do a podcast about that, Colin.
I should, shouldn't I? Particularly the CDs and tapes.
I've just had a look and I found on YouTube Altered Images live at Belladrum from the BBC on the 27th of July of this year, so only a few weeks away, and Claire Grogan looks absolutely fantastic. She's got a big sequin dress on, feather boa, huge outsized glasses, and she looks like she's having the time of her life.
I watched Punk Rock Factory's set from Belladrum the other day. It's really weird because it's from BBC Alba.
Yes. The Gaelic channel, isn't it?
So the people doing the, like, where Joe Wiley would be on the Glastonbury footage are all speaking in Gaelic. And I've never seen people speaking in Gaelic on the telly. It was really cool.
I remember...
Didn't understand any of it. But
I remember spending some time in Glasgow to go see wrestling, a show that both me and Mark went to.
Yeah, but you were in the cheap seats.
Yeah, I was. I was in the cheap seats. I don't have the connections you have. I didn't at the time. But I was in my hotel and I was just sort of channel hopping, and I ended up watching Danger Mouse in Gaelic, which was frigging hilarious.
Yeah, when I used to go to my nan's house in Wales when I was a kid, I used to watch S4C and just watch random cartoons in Welsh as well.
Next up is the profile of Dwayne Dibley, and it just comes across as really cruel.
Yeah.
And what I think was really important about Dwayne Dibley is that he wasn't an incel.
No.
He didn't behave with that entitlement and childishness. His childishness was much more innocent and likable. And the vitriol he gets in this article feels really mean.
Yeah. It's like they've totally misjudged it, haven't they?
Yeah.
But I also think there's a bit in the Dwayne Dibley comic strip next, which is in a similar vein, but we'll get onto that in a minute.
Yeah, so that's next. It is the Dwayne Dibley comic strip, and it's called Home. And it was just a bit odd to me, and I felt like there really wasn't enough in the 2 pages it was given
it's part 3.
to really get much out of it.
We've had
previous
2 parts. That's how it works when it's part 3. That was quite a redundant thing I just said, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The main issue I have on this, now I think it is mentioned in one of the episodes, something about him living in a Salvation Army hostel.
Yeah.
That really didn't sit well with me in this comic, because it's playing it for laughs in a haha, he's homeless kind of way, which is that's not cool. I work for a housing association, so I'm speaking to people every day who are homeless and are living in hostels and stuff like that. And it's not fucking funny. Hostels are a necessary evil. They are somewhere for people to live in while they're trying to find somewhere more permanent. But it's not something to be fucking mocked. There are absolutely fucking criticisms to be made about the Salvation Army, with them being a massively fucking homophobic and transphobic organisation. They supported Section 28. They've, supported conversion therapy and bollocks like that.
The one thing they do in their hostels as well is if you are a heterosexual couple, you're allowed to share a room. If you're a homosexual couple, you are not. So,
fuck the Salvation Army, apart from the few people that very much do need to stay in their hostels. But yeah.
Well, that was heavy.
Sorry. Well, they put it right at the end of the fucking magazine, so I had to... Oh, no, they didn't. There's fucking Omnizone bit that I've skipped.
Yeah, so we've got news from the Omnizone. Let's talk about that. And the Babylon 5 pilot speculation made me smile, and I always thought Babylon 5 was better than Deep Space Nine. And yeah, there's some information about Star Trek 6, and they've found some Patrick Troughton stories. But this is Red Dwarf Magazine? I don't understand.
As I said yesterday, it's a dry run for SFX Magazine.
Yeah. There's a couple of things in here that I did notice. One was they talked about how things that were trying to pick up where Deep Space Nine left off, and one of them is Space Rangers, which I have seen the trailer for because I subscribe to a YouTube channel who puts compilations of show intros from through the years.
Of course you do.
A very Carl thing to do.
You are the tap master.
But yeah, Space Rangers was one, and it had like a decent cast, and it looked like it had quite a bit of money thrown at it. But yeah, according to this, it only lasted 4 episodes. And also there's one called Time Tracks, which I do kind of remember, and looked cheap and crap from what I remember. But seeing that was interesting. And also talking about Tech War, William Shatner's Tech War.
Yeah.
Which the main thing I remember about it is there's a terrible video game that's based off it, and William Shatner appeared on Monday Night Raw to promote it because it was on after Monday Night Raw, and he did a monkey flip to Jerry the King Lawler.
He did a monkey flip of all the moves. You'd have thought he'd have done a Stone Cold Stunner.
Well, this was 1993.
Oh, okay. So,
I remember reading reviews of the computer game, computer and video games magazine at the time, and yes, I'm fairly certain it got a very bad review.
Yeah, there's a guy on YouTube who plays a lot of like first person shooters, and he played the Tech War one, and it's got William Shatner in it in like full motion video, and he just basically slags you off the whole time.
Which is probably what would happen if he was there in real life.
Yeah.
So
true. Dear. So that was Red Dwarf Smegazine Volume 2, Issue 2. We will now discuss what we thought was the worst article in the magazine. And I don't even know. There was quite a lot of shite. All 3 of the letter pages were shit for me. I found the hollow protection thing really distasteful. I didn't like the profile of Dwayne Dibley.
That's mine, Dwayne Dibley profile.
Yeah, same.
They got the tone totally wrong. He's a lovable character.
I think I agree. So it's almost right-wing humour. Left-wing humour punches up, and right-wing humour kicks down. And I don't find kicking down something that's funny, personally.
No, they should be better than that, and they usually were.
Yeah, I mean, Red Dwarf is fundamentally a left-wing programme, concept, culture, because frankly, look at the cast.
Yep.
Anyway, favourite things. How about you go first this time, Carl?
For me, it's actually Greetings from Gelf World. It's probably one of the better one-off strips that they've done. And I really love the art style on it, and it makes me excited coming into the Mimer's Crossing that we're going to be having in the next few episodes.
Yeah.
Colin?
That revelation about Universal sending the tape of the US pilot, but telling them that they couldn't show it, that just made the whole issue for me. I laughed for about 10 minutes when I read that. I love the absurdity of it. It's ridiculous.
So, I really struggled with a favourite, as much as I struggled with a worst, actually. And I almost always go for a comic strip. But the Creating Space article was just a nice, tight, little, fun info thing. And I nearly went for it, but then, like Carl, Greetings from Gelf World was fucking sublime.
Awesome.
So, that's another one under our belt. One of 5, not 9, this week. And, Colin, where can people find you? Should we not do that? Should we do a favourite thing?
Go on then.
What is your favourite non-domesticated animal?
It's a good question. Because, I mean...
Actually, I'm going to change my mind. What is your favourite British wildlife animal?
Badger.
Badger, good. Carl, what is your favourite non-domesticated British animal?
Hedgehog.
Good choice. I want to know why badger, Colin.
I've just always liked badgers. They're cool. They're a bit goth, nocturnal. They're like, hanging around in the woodlands, being all stripy.
And Carl, why did you choose hedgehog?
I think remembering various road safety things as a kid. Like little animated hedgehogs, just like...
If you're going to get run over, curl up into a ball.
It's something I still use to this day.
Right. and for me, it's fox, right? And the reason I like foxes so much is they look like a dog, but they move like a cat. and that is the best combo. I love dogs and I love cats, and foxes have got a nice face. They're ginger and they're like a dog cat. The best.
Yeah, I can dig that.
So with that revelation, thank you very much for joining us for another episode, another ridiculous
of the
episode
Animals of Farthing Wood
Shipwrecked
podcast.
Comatose. That too. And until next time.
What noise does a badger make? That's probably not it, but it'll do.
Oh dear.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network.
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm Ian.
And I'm Tracy.
And we dig music.
Just not always the same music.
Each episode, we pick our 10 favourite songs from a specific year, rate them, and then battle it out over a top 30 countdown.
Colin's pretty enthusiastic about most stuff, Ian less so.
And Tracy definitely owns a thesaurus. And one of us will regularly be told to fuck off.
So join us each month to hear what we dig and what we don't. Listen to We Dig Music wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on wedigpodcast.com, or we're on the We Made This Podcast network, which you can find at wemadethisnetwork.com.